Good morning, everybody. I've got the graveyard shift, so please be gentle with me. Okay. Right, so my name is Andrew Mills. I am the former sole owner and 100% shareholder of a company called TL Engineering Services Limited. And back in 2021, I sold TL Engineering to an employee ownership trust. The company, just a brief overview of the business, we've been trading since 1994. We design, manufacture, supply and install lifting equipment primarily to the water treatment industry. Question I'm sure a lot of you guys ask is, and the question I was asking myself when I decided to sell is, really, what is the end game? When do I sell? I've been at the business for 29 years. It could play an absolutely humongous part in my life, too big a part to be honest with you. And a key question I got is, what was the ownership succession plan for the business? The company had maxed out at 39 employees, which I know that's still obviously an SME, but for me, as a sole owner, it's becoming more and more difficult to control. And it was really also a part lifestyle decision for myself, that for my wife, my family, and an attempt to actually enjoy some of the benefits of what I'd built over the 29 years since I started the business. Why was the EOT the right exit route for me? A trade sale for me was not totally suitable. There were barriers to a trade sale, in the main in finding the right buyer, which I'll come on to shortly with the emotional attachment to the business. What I wanted to see with the business was the legacy had to be protected. That was absolutely non-negotiable. We did have offers for trade sales, but when I went down the road there, I was finding myself that I wasn't comfortable. So I decided that wasn't the route for me. An MBO was not possible, primarily due to financial restrictions, with the guys that actually become 3 directors raising. I know Chris mentioned about getting skin in the game, but that could have been potentially difficult. For me, the EOT ticked most of the boxes for ownership succession. It gave us business continuity. It left a suitable legacy. There is, of course, a favourable tax advantage. And I can still be a trustee of the business after I've left, so I can still input, albeit not on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Emotional attachment and legacy. Well, as I said, for me, this was the most important deal, the most important part of the deal. This was my business. I was passionate about it. I cared about it, and I wanted to ensure everything was done correctly. And definitely leave a suitable legacy. You know, just wanted to be welcomed back for a cup of tea and not just ignored. I've not acquired this business. It's been grown from day one, so it's been built. The legacy was very important to me, and it had to be moved on in a way where, for me, the business was protected. The EOT definitely gave me that comfort. Time investment required by the owner during the transaction. Yeah, there is time investment required. But frankly, if I'm being very blunt, this is really important. I think, as Andy said, it's possibly the biggest asset that I personally had. So it has to be done right. So all the time that you put into it, in my opinion, is warranted. One thing I did do, which I'm happy to show people this afterwards, is I actually purchased this book here, which was very, very helpful. It sort of gave you an end-to-end process of what an EOT is, how it all works, very easy to read, and it sort of gave me a bit of familiarity with what's going to happen if we engage Shorts and the other professional advisors who sort of got involved with the deal. Plan well to ensure key areas are dealt with correctly. Yeah, well, absolutely, the planning is key. For your personal areas, what you want to get out of it yourself, ensure that it works for you. Ensure you're staying compliant with the whole process, which will be guided by these guys and everybody else that obviously is involved. HMRC, making sure we're staying compliant there. Agree a realistic valuation for the business. Yes, it is your business, but you've got to be realistic, and you can't just keep putting notes on the end. You've just got to think, right, you know, this is actually correct and you're comfortable with it. Plan the appointment of suitable trustees. I will come on to that later. This was something that I was a bit sceptical of, and wow, how does this work? But believe me, it really was a comfortable thing to do, and it's worked really well for my business, or my former business, should I say. And if required, set up an EMI scheme for key staff who have helped you get to where you are today. And as Matt said, he set up or gifted some shares to some of his employees. I was able to do a fantastic thing for 3 members of staff at T. Allen who've played such a huge part in actually building the business and the success of it, and now they've been granted an EMI scheme, which ultimately means they'll become shareholders of the business once all the deferred consideration's paid. During the deal, maintaining confidentiality until completion and full announcements are made. Yes, keeping everything under wraps until that's made, for me, was challenging. People will notice, people will obviously know how you work normally day to day, and notice a change in your working patterns. You're spending more time at Shorts than you're in your own office. So basically, you've got to obviously then try and work around that. But thankfully, it all did stay confidential, and it was announced in the correct way. Moving on to the announcement and how did the employees react. The announcement to the staff is key. Again, plan it well. And just be honest and tell the staff why you're doing this, that it's a sole-owned business and it needs to have a succession plan. And basically, just do this in nice plain English and offer to field any questions. The door's always open. Again, for me, that worked really well. It's important to communicate out that it secures the long-term future of the business. There is a concern with a sole-owned business that what if, God forbid, the guy who owns it, who's a sole owner, he dies, he suddenly falls out of love with the business and just wants to move on and loses interest. It takes away all that uncertainty now. The business will carry on indefinitely. So that's certainly a good selling point, shall I say. And just reassure all staff that, frankly, nothing's going to change because you are telling them the truth. You're not sugarcoating it. It is actually, that's what's going to happen. What I also did, I did an individual presentation to key staff before the main announcement. This then prepared them for all questions that may come from their team. Because obviously people do talk and then they go away and Google what does an EOT mean and what's it mean for me, and it's very important to them. We get that. That all worked well. There is a tax-free staff annual bonus available under an EOT, which again, I just mentioned that people go away and suddenly come back the next day and say, one question I have got is, I can get a £3,600 tax-free bonus every year. Well, you've got to set the expectations out on that, and I actually answered that question before it was asked. The model that we've got is my shares are being purchased via a deferred arrangement, and it's being paid over a period of time. And basically, once that's been paid, that will then trigger the option of giving the staff the bonus. That's only available if the company performs. So there is a good incentive there for staff. Also, tell all the staff that they're not now company owners, because they might all think that you've got 39 managing directors walking through the door, and that's not the case. It's basically, it's owned by a trust, but they are now acting in your interest as employees. The EMI staff, as I mentioned earlier, to incentivise key long-term staff. Everybody in this room's got their own individual stories on their business, but for me, as I mentioned, I've got 3 particular managers who are now directors who are absolutely, so committed to the business. An incredible thank you to them is to grant them that EMI scheme, and it is pretty complex that. Dave looked after that really well for us. Adam obviously also guided us down the road of the whole process really well. But now that is genuinely a life-changing thing for them. So again, that was a really nice thing to be able to do. How has it been a couple of years following the transition to the EOT? Genuinely, it's been business as usual because we've not stopped doing what we do. We still make lifting equipment. We still provide the same brilliant customer service. Of course we do. And everything settled down really quickly after the announcement was made. And basically, the business is just carried on as usual. For me, now there is additional support at the top of the business. There's now 3 additional directors in place who support. They now get involved in a lot of things that they previously weren't involved in, monthly finance meetings, etc., etc. Me transitioning away from making a lot of the key decisions to them, again, it's challenging, but something that we're working through, and it's doing okay. The employee bonus, it's an incentive for staff, as I just mentioned earlier. They've got something to aim for. As long as you honour that promise, I really can't see there being a problem there. As long as you set the expectations out that it's not going to be paid until an approximate date when all the shares have been paid for. Trustees meetings to ensure ongoing compliance. The trustees that set up that I have, I do believe, and these guys are better to speak to about this than me, but possibly you can appoint professional trustees, but the way that I wanted to do it was that I offered to stay a trustee of the business. We have 2 trustee meetings each year, obviously every 6 months. I've got myself as a trustee. What can I bring to the table? I've got the familiarity of the business, and I know the business inside out. A good friend of mine, unfortunately, is a partner in a solicitor's firm, very familiar with trust, so he's a trustee. And then I also had a business coach, advisor, who I've used for years, and he's a trustee. So he should generally know about business in general. So I've got a great team there. They come in, and all that we do within those meetings is just report key things to the trustees. They don't get involved in the day-to-day running of the business. We obviously review financials, any major happenings at the business are reported into them, but they do not run the business. Ultimately, if all the directors left, they'd have to step in, but they don't run the business. The payment of the deferred consideration for me, only feedback I can give there is keep the emotions in check with the payment of the deferred consideration. For me, it's not the be all and end all. There was a nice sum of money that come out of the business on completion, and now there's a deferred payment schedule that thankfully is being kept to. But I have had to basically extend that on a couple of payments. My advice there would just remember what you've actually got, and don't go chasing the exit. Stick to the plan with the deferred payments. So last slide, expect emotion. When you sell a business that you've been at since day one and grown for 26 years, categorically it is emotional. It really is. It does feel, prepare yourself for change. It does feel different when you walk in we announced it on a Friday. I walked in on a Monday morning and thought, I don't actually own this place anymore. But actually, you do get used to it, and it does feel very right now. Decide what is important to you. Is it the money? Is it the future lifestyle change? Is it the legacy? And for me, through having some bumps in the road on a trade sale, one particular, and forgive me Andy, but trade sales I'm sure all aren't like this, but there's one particular company that looked at T. Allen, who were a competitor as such, and they would have just come in and carved the business up, and I couldn't allow that to happen. So for me, categorically, the legacy and leaving it, walking away on that final day with your head held high, that was very important to me. Obviously the money side of it, the money side is obviously there, and the lifestyle change, if you can phase yourself out. I've got a plan to phase myself out by the end of 2025, and if we can stick to that, then hopefully everything should work. For us all, the EOT tax break is absolutely awesome. There's no better figure than 0%. But for me, it wasn't everything. That's the reason why I've offered to keep the payments deferred over a period of time rather than ask the company to borrow to actually finance paying me early. So it wasn't everything to me. At the risk of repeating myself again, for me, the legacy was the key one. Offer support to the new directors. They're not you, and they will need help. You've got 3 people who've come into a much more senior position now as a director, and they're going to be asking questions. Oh, what's the responsibility? Do I go to jail if something goes wrong? Blah, 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 blah. Just offer that support to them guys, because they will need it. Stay patient and stick to the original time scale. As I mentioned earlier, don't try and fast track your exit when you have a bad day and think I want all my deferred consideration now, I never want to see you again. Just basically try and stick to the plan. Certainly do your own research. As I said, you can go online and find loads of things, but there's that many different websites online. I found everything was in one place in there, so I'd recommend that. With the guys who I work with, set out your expectations early. And 2 main things I said to Shorts, which you may think I'm bound to say this, but categorically it worked really well. I worked fantastically well with Adam Ames, I don't want to embarrass you, Adam, and also Dave Robinson on a day-to-day basis. I just said, I need a response. I don't want to be waiting 5 days for a phone call to come back, because this is so important to me. And I really don't want any shocks down the line. And thankfully, they ticked both them boxes fantastically well. Ask a lot of questions, including the stupid ones, because believe me, I did. And finally, don't try and do this all yourself. For me, I'm not a corporate deal maker who understands the process fully. I'm not a tax advisor, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a solicitor, and I'm not a business valuer. All people, all professional bodies that are needed to bring the EOT together. So surround yourself with good people you're comfortable with, and hopefully, it should hopefully work. So, thank you.